Okay, welcome back for part 2. This part we're going to talk about the modeling options for the Anglo-Danes. We're going to walk through a number of manufacturers. These are just the ones that we are aware of. I'm sure there are more out there that we're unaware of, but I think we're probably going to cover most of the options that are that cover maybe, I don't know, 90% of what people actually use. Okay, yeah, so I've got my footsore warlord. I think he's the late Saxon warlord.
Yeah, lovely figure, as always with footsore. Again, if you really wanted to be super Grognard, you could swap those round shields out for kites, but I mean, for Saga, I don't think it matters all that much.
Yeah, so, okay, that's good. He passes the test. And so you mentioned these figures. Maybe slightly controversial choice. It's not something you normally see people use, but the Conquest Games Norman infantry with maybe a little bit of alterations would work very well as Anglo-Danes. I think the kit actually comes with people with Dane axes as well, so that kind of saves you having to kit bash. There seems to be some armored figures between there with the longer hauberks as well, from what I can tell.
Yeah, it's I've not got a great amount of experience with this kit myself. I was looking at it the other day, thinking it might make some quite interesting conversions, but it's got the right kind of equipment and clothing for the late Anglo-Dane period. So again, spears, kite shields, conical helms, probably a bit not quite enough armor in there. Probably should have a few more mail shirts, but as they're Norman infantry, then they probably haven't got they've saved all the nice equipment for the milites on the horseback. One thing, if you are building Huskarls out of the kit, make sure they've got armor, because they did. But yeah, I think it's got some good options there. And if you're not averse to kit bashing and bringing in some of the other manufacturers' models, then you've got quite a range of options here.
Move on to Gripping Beast, which is probably the entry level kit that most people are familiar with, especially with Saga, since they are the distributor. So I've just pulled up here the picture of their plastic 4-point warband. So this is actually a pretty good deal. I think it's 22 pounds, and then it gets you enough to build 4 points worth of warband. I'm going to say straight away, I think the kit itself doesn't actually have any way of making Dane axes, but people do seem to kit bash it just using I think like a spear shaft and cutting off the tip and replacing it with an axe head.
Yeah,
so
there's also
so there's some workarounds there, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the Viking warriors also come with two-handed axes, don't they, in the kit?
I don't know. I've never actually bought this kit.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, the Gripping Beast models are fine. Like you say, the kind of entry level. They're the sculpts are entirely passable. I always think they look a little bit like they're squatting, like the old Games Workshop Space Marines, but I don't know if there's much you can do about that. But I mean, in terms of kit quality, they're fine. They're nice plastics. They don't have any particularly horrible bits to build. They're not massively chunky on the weapon front most of the time. So yeah, perfectly fine.
Yeah. They also have a metal range at Gripping Beast, so they also have a 4-point starter warband, 100% in metal, and there is a warlord in with a Dane axe, and it looks like it's 2 points of warriors just with normal, no equipment options, 1 point of Hearthguard with just standard weapons, and 1 point of Hearthguard with Dane axes.
Yep, so again, fine. Some of the warriors at the back have the little sort of Smurf hats that the Saxons had, which is quite cool. Kind of unique to them. I think Smurf hat is not the correct terminology for it, but it works, and you know what we're talking about. And again, yeah, a bit of a mix here, because the warriors are all sort of certainly more early period, and the Huskarls a bit more Hastings era, but no issues with that if you wanted to knock them together.
You mentioned Perry Miniatures. They've got a Norman range, and Perry Miniatures, pretty well known historical range.
Yeah, the Perrys are some fantastic sculptors, and their models are always really nice. They're always well proportioned. They are usually slightly smaller than a lot of other manufacturers. They're a little bit more true scale. So if you're very conscious about making sure everything's matching, it might be a bit of a problem. But yeah, like you say, they've got they call it's a Crusaders range, so it's First Crusade, which is 1096, but the equipment options for a lot of the armored and unarmored Norman infantry would be absolutely fine for Anglo-Danes at the Hastings period.
Footsore.
Think about the late Saxons or the Normans from Footsore. So they've actually got two ranges which would be suitable for here. So again, as we say, the Norman equipment isn't that different to the Anglo-Saxons at the period of Hastings. So they'll make some quite good stand-ins if you want to bulk out the troops. But yeah, Footsore miniatures are always lovely. They're consistently some of the nicest historical miniatures on the market. Generally quite well researched. They've got nice options. So the ones you got here, the warriors, they're all fine. Again, maybe get some kite shields to switch out, but apart from that, the rest of the equipment is pretty much spot on.
Yeah.
They've got so they're wearing hauberks. They've got the conical helms. So yeah, all solid.
Yeah. So one thing Footsore is missing are the Hearthguard with Dane axes. So they have a Viking range that have the heavy weapons, but they don't really have a Saxon range with them. I don't think they actually have a Normans with them either. So I think that might be a little bit of a gap in their range if you want to use models with the Dane axes. But you can probably get away with converting some of the armored Normans Hearthguard looking models and maybe just having the Dane axes at rest, kind of, without with the one hand with the shield and one hand just carrying their Dane axe. So you should be able to do something there.
Yeah, I mean, the Huskarls all carry Dane axes as well as their all carry Dane axes and kite shields together. So having both isn't really a problem. You can't use them both at the same time, but having your models carry both isn't an issue.
Yep. Okay. So Saxon, I guess Warlord Games has a range. So that's the old Saxon miniatures, and then they do actually have a range of Dane axe equipped Hearthguard.
They do. Mail shirts are slightly small, unfortunately, but or at least for Hastings. But apart from that, they're fine. One man seems to have left his helmet alone and at home and just brought his hat along. But
no, he's got it on his belt there.
Oh, he does. You're right. Nice.
Yeah, he just kind of forgot to turn it on.
Yeah.
Put it on.
Not the smartest move, but never mind. But yeah, they're perfectly serviceable. They're in sort of matching scale with pretty much all the other manufacturers. So certainly get them if you want to fill in without doing any of the conversion work. Especially if you want to use metals, because chopping those up is never fun.
Yeah, so they actually look pretty dynamic as well. They're all swinging. I guess the poses aren't massively different, but they all look quite nice. And I think it's a mix of kite shields and round shields as well, from what I can see.
Yeah, there's only so many ways you can swing a Dane axe, so limited posing isn't really a problem.
Yeah, no, I think they look really nice. Okay, so finally, the Foundry, Wargames Foundry, they have a range of Saxons. It's maybe a little bit more cartoonish compared to other ranges, a little bit more fantasy, but I think they've got pretty gigantic range of historical miniatures out there as well.
Yeah, maybe a bit more 80s rather than a bit more fantasy. So it's all a little bit kind of what reenactors in the 1980s and 1990s were wearing. But if you like that sort of thing, then go for it. And the models from Foundry, I've never bought them myself, but the ones that I have seen, they're quite well cast. They're reasonably well scaled with everyone else's miniatures. So if you want them, go for them.
Yeah, okay. I think that's the end of all of the models that we have. I'm sure there's a lot more. If you think we've missed some really obvious ones, please let me know in the comments. And that's it for now, and thank you very much for listening.